go. Elbows in tight.
We only get one body, so might as well treat it well.
It's a prescription you cannot fill at a pharmacy. Exercise as medicine. And today we meet the providers who practice what they prescribe.
From the University of Kansas Health System.
I am amazed. The team here is great.
I came on a Tuesday, and then by Saturday I had a heart in me.
I have never seen a group of people work together so good as this team of heart specialists. I mean, it's just unreal.
Stand by to set up show.
And the Dolph C. Simons Jr. Family Broadcast Studio.
Roll it.
Always makes you feel like you're the most important patient on the planet.
I felt heard, and that was really big.
This is All Things Heart.
Good morning, I'm Alexis Del Cid. Welcome to All Things Heart. Here's what we're talking about today. Is exercise the miracle drug?
I can't measure endorphins, but I know that if I'm not exercising, I don't feel as good.
Research shows physical activity prevents chronic disease. So what defines physical activity and how much do you need? We answer the questions you're asking at home. And of course, we love taking you behind the scenes, behind the mask, to get to know the healthcare providers outside of the hospital. That's exactly what we're doing for the whole program today. You're about to meet 5 different providers from different specialties who are passionate about exercise when it comes to their patients and themselves. And we always love your questions and comments. Simply put, they're the heartbeat of every episode. So be sure to send them in and connect with us on Facebook, YouTube, and the All Things Heart email. You will find those links right here on your screen. Heart disease, pulmonary disease, diabetes, obesity, and a slew of other chronic conditions can all be treated with various medications, but also with something that is available to you right now with no prescription or trip to the store, and that's exercise. And these providers know that firsthand.
Just getting warmed up.
Whether it's the gym, the pavement, or the pool, ask these University of Kansas Health System healthcare workers what motivates them. You'll get similar answers.
There's now evidence that strength training makes a difference in your survival.
I'm definitely a firm believer that exercise is medicine.
It's just as important as the medications that you're taking because it'll really give you those long-term effects.
It's really an easy, non-pharmacological way, non-surgical way to help treat some of our ailments that affect our cardiovascular conditions.
I'm gonna try to push it.
RN Elizabeth Hart is a competitive bodybuilder.
2017 is when I did my first one, and I did it kind of as like a bucket list thing.
She's been hooked ever since.
Okay, I can do my heavier weight. Kind of smile so he doesn't know I'm hurting.
Cardio-oncologist Dr. Charlie Porter.
Stop and switch.
A regular at the Westwood Cross Training Club.
So this is just a stomach-wrecking ab exercise, but they call it driving Miss Daisies. Because like we're driving the car.
You gotta work when you come in here. There's no dilly-dallying around.
Family and sports medicine physician Dr. Nicole Yadlinski is a marathon runner, currently training for a triathlon.
Oh my goodness, it's probably one of the most meditative exercises that I feel humans can do.
And advanced heart failure and transplant cardiologist Dr. Paula Roldan.
Been doing this since college.
Is up at 4:30 every morning.
I like working out in my home gym because it's convenient, it's accessible. I have accountability with my husband.
When it comes to talking with their patients about the importance of exercise, all 4 say their core belief that exercise is medicine makes it a no-brainer.
I love talking about nutrition and exercise with anyone. It's my second passion next to nursing.
If you walk 2 or 3 hours a week, after you're about 40, you start to reduce your risk of cardiac death.
It's been studied in a lot of cardiovascular patients, diabetic patients, obese patients.
I think it gives me some credibility, especially with the adolescent crowd, that they see me out here doing these things.
Boom, boom, boom. There you go.
We have an incredible panel today. We want to welcome the physician-in-chief at the KU Cancer Center, Dr. Jeffrey Holzberlein. Thank you for being here. Cardio-oncologist Dr. Charlie Porter. We have cardiologist Paola Roldan and family and sports medicine doctor Nicole Yadlinski and registered nurse Elizabeth Hart. It is so motivating watching all of you work out. Dr. Holzberlein, I want to start with you because you sent me some very recent video of you working out every single day as well. This was impressive, and I want to show our viewers. This looks very hard, and I want to know, first of all, are you showboating here? Like, did you do this for the whole hour, or was this just for the 10 minutes someone was rolling?
Actually, it's just part of a workout circuit that we do. So this would just be one exercise of one of the workout circuits that we do.
Are those burpees? What are those?
They're called a variation of a burpee, yeah.
And how often are you lifting weights and exercising and running and doing everything?
Yeah, so like Dr. Yedlinski, I'm a big runner, but one of the, I think, important parts of that is that cross-training is really critical in order to stay healthy. So the sort of multi-component exercises where you're lifting weights, cardio, multiple movements is really important to stay healthy.
I know we hear everyone says exercise is good for you. Exercise is something everybody should do. How do you use it to treat or prevent cancer? You're a cancer guru.
Yeah, it's a really important question and a really important part of caring for the whole patient when we have a patient with a cancer diagnosis. One of the things that I think we really try to do, and we actually have a really great onco rehab team at the Cancer Center, is really identify patients who are at risk for developing complications from frailty. And we know there are opportunities to intervene, and exercise is a critical component of that sort of assessment and caring for the whole patient. So whether that's at the beginning of their cancer journey or at the end of their cancer journey or even during their cancer journey, we talk a lot about sort of being able to complete your activities of daily living and how critical that is for patients to remain independent. And all too often we see patients who focus solely on just the treatment for their cancer and sometimes neglect the other components, and exercise is a critical component of that.
People are more apt to have faith in a pill than in running or doing sit-ups or lifting weights. I want to bring in Dr. Yedlinski because you are such an accomplished runner. Not everybody can do what you do, so for us mortals, right, what do you count as physical activity when you're talking to just a regular patient?
Yeah, so I think anything that gets your body moving. We talk about things that increase their stamina, increase their balance, increase their endurance. Technically, the recommendation is for 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous activity a week. That's basically anything that gets your heart rate up, gets your sweat on, is what I use, the words I use to describe it to patients. But really, any movement counts.
Do you feel like it helps to not call it exercise? Like if someone just does something they enjoy that happens to involve movement?
Absolutely. Anything that increases physical activity is important. And I also like to tap in to ask patients what they used to enjoy when they were younger. What hobbies did they like to do? What did they do when they were in high school or even middle school or even when they were younger? What did they enjoy when they were growing up?
I want to bring in Dr. Holzberlein. Dr. Holzberlein, I got to talk to you about tennis. Now, I feel like you're being modest because Dr. Porter says you're this phenomenal tennis player, and I'm like, send me pictures. And you sent me some amazing pictures of a very young Dr. Holzberlein. Let's take a look at these pictures. This was something that you did for a lot of your younger life and throughout college, and I would imagine that really sparked your interest in staying fit throughout your whole life.
Yeah, it really did. And, you know, it's really important. I think not enough attention maybe gets to sort of getting young people involved in activities, sort of building those patterns and habits early on, I think translates later into wanting to continue to be active. And I think many times the sort of physical activity that you have as a young person is sort of the basis for what allows you to continue to be active and engage in activity afterwards.
And then you make friends who enjoy activity. I have a bunch of girlfriends that love pickleball, and that all they do is pickle, but it's great because everybody's moving and it's pickleball. Elizabeth Hart, our RN, you also happen to be a competitive bodybuilder. Do you talk to your patients about being a competitive bodybuilder?
Yeah, I mean, it does come up in conversation. Patients want to know what they need to do as far as exercise and diet, especially in the cardiac world. And so, you know, they want to know what I do. And of course, I share with them what I do. But I think going back to the basis of what exercise is and the benefits of it, it's really anything that you do enjoy. And I do enjoy bodybuilding, maybe a little bit more extreme, but I really try to connect with patients and find out what they like to do, and try to, get on their level and see how they can increase their activity and their exercise.
When you first started bodybuilding, if you look back to how you felt physically before that and how you feel now, just physically, what are the biggest differences that you've noticed since you've gotten involved in this hobby, this passion of yours?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions, especially around women and postpartum, so I got into bodybuilding actually after I had my first daughter, is that you just kind of have to be in this body after you have kids. And I found bodybuilding and weightlifting, and really you have the ability to transform your body into whatever you want it to be. So I think just that renewed confidence was major, and then also it just gives me a lot of energy to keep up with my kids. So I think that's a really important piece when you have, a 1-year-old and a 7-year-old, is just trying to keep up with them.
Which is nearly impossible.
Yeah.
Even if you're a bodybuilder. I want to bring in Dr. Roldan. I want to also take a look at how much physical activity we need as we look at this. Again, we've heard the 150 minutes. That's 2.5 hours a week for adults. So that's about how much you need. So Dr. Roldan, how do you prescribe that? Do you write it down like a prescription?
Yeah, in some ways I do, but you have to cater it to your patient. There's some patients that they're a little bit sedentary. And then there's some patients that we have that are bodybuilders or tennis players, or they go to CrossFit on a regular basis. And as Dr. Ladinsky kind of alluded to, 150 minutes is kind of what we prescribe. But you have to cater it to the patient. So if they're not doing anything currently, then you just talk to them about, how about walking a block a day?
Right, just start small.
Just start small.
Something attainable.
And I think starting small is so important, particularly if you go from not doing anything to doing something, because otherwise if you say, how about you try to do 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, getting your heart rate to 70 to 75% of your max predicted heart rate, and patients are going to feel defeated, especially if they've gone from nothing to doing 30 minutes and they feel winded after that first couple minutes of doing exercise.
So you meet your patients where they are.
Correct.
And start from there.
And then as we kind of alluded to as well, exercise can be so many different things. It can be dancing, it can be biking, it can be tennis, it can be in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be at a gym, on a treadmill, lifting weights.
Because that is intimidating for some people.
Yeah.
I know I was intimidated seeing you do those driving Miss Daisies, Dr. Porter. That looked like that. Your workout guy is a tough guy.
Yeah.
He was really
no pain,
really
no gain.
Right, no pain, no gain. Do you, as a cardio-oncologist, ever see conditions reversed because of exercise? Can you see people get better?
The condition of deconditioning does reverse. And I think it's very important. A lot of people, the two things that are most difficult in counseling are weight loss and exercise. And I really try to distinguish between the two, because exercise is not a weight loss technique. That's calorie restriction. And when I'm bargaining with people, you're in sales when you're talking about exercise and weight loss, I just say, look, I'm just trying to get you to do 2.5 hours a week of exercise. But if I'm trying to get you to lose weight, there's 168 hours in the week, you sleep 50, so you've got 118 hours, and you have to diet all those hours.
Right.
And I'm only asking for 2.5 for exercise, and you've succeeded.
That's a good sales pitch.
So let somebody else handle the other 115 hours. I'll just settle for exercise.
Get them moving.
Yeah.
You also shared some really interesting data with us, and I want to put it up on the screen. It illustrates mortality rates with exercise. This was pretty impactful looking at this. What's your biggest takeaway from this graph here?
Well, that graph shows a study done at Ball State with thousands of people over years, and they showed a significant reduction in both cardiovascular disease death, all-cause mortality, and cancer mortality. So this is not just cardiology, this is oncology, and the reduction in cancer death from exercise was shown nearly 25 years ago in a study of retired non-smoking Japanese men in Oahu, which the follow-up was great, because once you've retired in Oahu, you never leave.
Right.
So they're not moving back to Kansas.
Right.
So you don't lose them. And they showed as much reduction with 2 miles a day versus 1 mile a day walking as much reduction in cardiovascular disease death or cancer as cardiovascular disease. And so it is both of those things. They both have, both those diseases have some inflammation, and exercise reduces inflammatory responses. So you're not just fighting they're the two #1 killers in the U.S. So then as long as you do that, walk and don't text while you're driving, you're in good shape.
You're lowering your
Yeah.
odds of something
Yeah,
bad happening.
right.
Yeah. I noticed that all of our doctors are vigorously nodding their heads yes. When people come to, a lot of times when they come to the doctor, it's not a checkup, it's because they're really not having a great time in life. I mean, Dr. Porter, I love you, but I don't want to see you as your patient. You're a cardio-oncologist, and Dr. Holzberlein, ditto. I like seeing you here, but I imagine people might feel down in the dumps and really low when they're coming to you in crisis. So how do you start that conversation to then motivate them to exercise?
Yeah, I think part of it is, again, going back to the fact that we want to make sure that they're functional when they finish their treatments. And one of the things we always do is outline a treatment plan. That treatment plan focuses primarily on the treatment of their cancer. But again, it's important to also start talking about how are we going to return your functionality once you're done with your treatments. And that goes across whether it's chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery. It's just such a critical component of continuing to maintain an active lifestyle, so that again, I think all of us would say, well, it doesn't matter if you treat their cancer. If they just have to lay in bed and can't do anything afterwards, that's not a good quality of life. So that quality of life piece and focusing on that, I think, is really important.
I want to bring in Dr. Jedlinski again, because one of the things you talked about when our photojournalist met you for your swim were the mental health benefits. And a lot of the doctors and our nurse Elizabeth Hart have talked about the mental health benefits. Can you talk about that component, Dr. Jedlinski?
Well, you mentioned that I'm a runner, but most of the time that I'm spending running is out on the trails, out in nature, and that is a really time for me to reset. And as I explain to my patients, exercise is a great way to take care of your heart, your lungs, your gut, but it's also a great way to take care of your brain. It's a time to really think through all of the things that are either bothering you or a time to reflect, and it's a great meditative process.
We talk about time being a challenge for a lot of people, and you had a great argument of why it shouldn't be a challenge, because you're just asking for 150 minutes. This is why I want to ask Elizabeth about this one, because you're the clinical program coordinator for cardiovascular education. You're a registered nurse, you're a bodybuilder, you have a new baby, a 7-year-old, and oh, and by the way, she's a personal trainer in her spare time. How? That's what I want to, how on earth is that all possible?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things is I have an amazing support system. So my husband, my family, I really couldn't do all that I do without them, for sure. But there's seasons for everything. I mean, I have times in my life where I do have a lot of time for my personal training and for myself. And there's other times that I really just need to focus on family. So I think that really knowing just to get in movement where you can, right? There was a point where I wasn't going to the gym and I wasn't lifting weights, but I was able to go on long walks with my family. That was my movement. So just because you see people and they're, professional bodybuilders, it doesn't mean that they also have seasons where maybe movement looks a little bit different. So again, just trying to get it in when you can, even if it's just 10 minutes.
And Dr. Roldan, you're a great example of that. You've been waking up at 4 a.m. since college?
Yeah.
Because that was the time you could get it in.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And just like Elizabeth alluded to, you have to fit it in where you can. And I was in medical school at that time that I started this habit, and by the time that you're finished with medical school, you're in the library, you're studying, and so 4:30 seemed to be the best time to wake up and get your morning jog in. And for me, and Charlie kind of mentioned this, it does release endorphins, and for someone who's in medical school, that's important. You need those endorphins.
Do you ever have those days where your alarm goes off and you just want to cry?
No.
So you just bound out of bed and go?
If I stay up too late, then yes. But
okay.
I know that if I don't feel as well.
Okay,
it's
not there's no reward if you don't do it.
Yeah.
We're getting some great community questions, so I want to get to those. And remember, you can Facebook us, you can contact us on YouTube, and send in emails as well. Got a question from Lisa. This is a great one, and I'm going to ask Dr. Porter this because you had talked about bargaining for time. Lisa wants to know, can she spread out her exercise throughout the day? Does 10 minutes 3 different times count as 30 minutes of exercise?
Yes, it does. And the key on that is I have had people who are trying to not do 30, and they'll say, how about 3 10s? Well, the thing I then probe is, well, if you do 2, are you going to tell yourself, well, I've done 2 10s, that's almost 3, I'm going to cut it short.
Okay.
So that if you're trying to exercise and it's not the highest priority in your life, if you do 30 minutes once, you only have to decide to exercise once that day.
Right.
But then if you're doing 3 10s, you have to decide 3 different times to start exercising.
To do it, right.
And so that falls down the list.
True, but it still counts if Kathy
you can
wants to
do
start
it.
out. Okay, or Lisa. Kathy has a question. She wants to know, does your heart rate have to be racing? I walk an hour a day, but I'm never out of breath. Dr. Yudlinski, is it okay if she's not out of breath?
It is okay to not be out of breath. You should be somewhat out of breath. Like there's this talk test, which is where you should only be able to talk in phrases, and that's really what defines that moderate to vigorous activity.
So you walking while you're talking on the phone with your earbuds, if you're having a comfortable conversation, it's not as great?
You probably want to at least try to pick up the pace a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. Jamie wants to know, are there risks to working out if you've never done anything before? And how do you start people? And Dr. Roldan, you've alluded to how you tackle that.
Yeah, so there are, I think, some risks. So I think one of them is defeat. You know, if you start off too quickly, I think you can feel a little bit defeated if you don't set yourself some small goals with the big goal in mind, but try to set some small goals initially. And I think the other risks are kind of more physical, meaning strain exercises can happen, shin splints can happen if you go from doing 0 to running a marathon.
Okay, and you don't want that, then it sets you back.
Right.
Both Janet and Marie have similar questions. I'm going to take this to Dr. Holzberlein. They ask, do you write exercise as a prescription? And then Janet wants to know, will my insurance cover a gym membership if it's a prescription from a doctor? It should, by the way. I feel like insurance should cover that if it's life-saving, but that's just me riffing here. I know it's hard.
Yeah, so I'll have to defer if anybody else has had success with that. I have not been able to get anybody a gym membership, but we do have services, and again, we do have an onco rehab team here, and you can make referrals there, and oftentimes that might be covered by a component of your insurance, particularly if you document a condition such as frailty. That might be something we'd be working on.
And then that it might do it.
Might.
Mike wants to know, can food also be medicine? Elizabeth, I would imagine it's crucial. Is it medicine?
Yes. Yes, I think nutrition is just as crucial as exercise. They definitely work hand in hand. I'm a firm believer that if you have both in conjunction, then you are going to get great results and be a healthier person. So yes, I would agree with that.
Let's see, I've got one from Paul. He writes, I stopped going to the gym 3 years ago because of COVID. Gosh, I've heard that from so many people. I haven't gone back. Doctors, what would you tell me about that worry? I want to ask Dr. Yudlinski about this because you do a lot of stuff outside. Maybe there are other options.
That's exactly right. So there's lots of open spaces, open air gyms. You can also utilize the pool. That's another really safe space to use. There are some gyms that have some open air spaces as well. So I would encourage anyone concerned about that. And there's also some smaller gyms that still enforce masking or enforce some spaces.
I got some questions from a couple of viewers about joint pain. Dr. Yudlinski, I'm going to stay on you with this one. Jonas wants to know when you started running. When did you start running? And then Jonas writes, do your knees hurt? Mine hurt when I run 4 blocks.
So this is one of the biggest myths that I fight. Running does not cause knee arthritis, nor does it make your knees worse, nor does it make arthritis worse. We have lots of really good evidence for this. So if you're worried about running making your knees worse or giving you arthritis, that is just not true at all. I just encourage everyone to start slow, incorporate walk breaks early, and just you don't need to go out from 0 to 60, right? Start slow, find some trails, find some softer surfaces, and really just ease into it.
When doctors and Elizabeth, when you get joint pain and you're doing a new lift, do you stop doing that lift or do you modify it?
It just depends, really. So there's all different kinds of pain, and that's why I tell people really, start out with someone who's trained in whatever you're going into, whether that's, a runner if you want to pick up running, or a Personal trainer, if you want to pick up, weights, is to know how to navigate that, because it's such a loaded question. It depends on the movement and the weight and what you're doing and your warm up and multiple things. So, yeah.
I have a question, and I'm not sure which doctor to address to, so raise your hands if you want it. Yoga, does that count? Looking at Elizabeth, does yoga count as physical activity if I was to do that 30 minutes a day?
Yes.
It does?
Yeah.
Because my heart's not pounding with yoga, but I do feel sore after I do it.
There's basically 4 benefits you can get out of exercise, roughly speaking: strength, stamina, flexibility, and balance.
Okay.
And yoga, and we do some moves, there are some things you do that have different names in yoga. They're named, and we just do them in stretching and stuff in the class. But flexibility and balance you don't get, but some of those things require strength. I mean, yoga is kind of underappreciated for what the demands are. But it's it's physical activity, and I'm not going to say yoga is not exercise and then go with someone who's been doing it 10 years. I'll be eating my words, catching my breath.
Some words for you.
Yeah.
I want to bring up some information on how you can get started here with the health system. Dr. Roldan provided an excellent link to the Turning Point through the University of Kansas Health System. That will direct you. You scan that QR code right on your screen there on the bottom right. It will direct you to various exercise courses that you can enroll in. Really a brilliant resource, so thank you for sharing that. And I want to keep our whole panel here for some final thoughts from our guests. So Elizabeth, I'll start with you. What do you want people watching at home to know the most?
I think that it's okay to know that everyone is a novice when they first start. No one is an expert at any type of movement or exercise that they first start doing. And also, when you get started, if it's not something you like, find something else. Just find something that you enjoy.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Dr. Yudlinsky?
Yeah, echo those comments. And also, in addition to Turning Point, our health system also has some great resources at Kermeyer Fitness Center and down at the Sports Performance Center in Overland Park.
Dr. Roldan, what would be your message to viewers who might be still feeling intimidated or reluctant?
Yeah, find something you enjoy, stick with it, and then I think accountability is important.
Like you, setting your alarm clock, and you've just been doing it.
Yeah, my husband gets up with me, so accountability
partner.
partner.
The accountability right
the accountability
there.
partner.
Dr. Porter, you were the genesis for this episode of All Things Heart. You're so passionate about exercise as medicine.
Well, yeah, and I'll say one thing. There's a special syndrome, I think, that people have who have been elite athletes. And I always start by saying, what did you do in high school? Because if you did sport, but there are people, say like if Dr. Holzbeierlein were seriously ill and then he stopped exercising, or someone, any of these people, sometimes the people who have been high performers cannot cut back down to becoming just a mere mortal.
Right.
And they will not, and they get discouraged. And I asked people who have been, I asked someone who was making a face about starting slow, and I said, well, is there something I said wrong? I mean, your face looked terrible. She said, yeah, I don't want to start that slow. My record for the 1 mile at Central High School stood for 15 years after I graduated.
Oh, wow.
So now I ask people, well, if you're out walking, and talking to a 40-year-old cancer survivor, if you're out walking somewhere slowly and having a nice time, and a guy who looks like me blows by you walking faster, do you automatically speed up? Heck yes. Yeah. I'm not going to let a guy like you go faster than me.
It's so true.
So you have to just reset. If you've been a high performer, sometimes you'll only I've seen these people, they're just discouraged because they'll only drop down 15 or 20% from what they were doing. They won't go down low enough and start slow enough. And they have a special challenge to drop down to being a mere mortal and then work their way back up.
Right. Dr. Holzbeierlein, what are your thoughts about that for our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some truth to that. My sort of exercise regimen might reflect that. But the only other thing I would add is that oftentimes in many of these instances, there are great communities, whether that's CrossFit communities, running communities. That's another really important part of, I think, exercise. Dr. Roldan mentioned about having somebody hold you accountable. And oftentimes, I think those people that you work out with or run with will hold you accountable. But they're also great for the mental health aspect. And we have a saying: if you can't talk while you're running too fast. And so we have a big group where we even go on runs and discuss a book once a month on one of our runs. So all sorts of things you can do in that kind of community.
So there's a happy medium too between just knocking yourself out every day and enjoying yourself so that you look forward to it the next day. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, Dr. Yedlinski. Thank you. This has been such a special program. And thank you so much to our viewers for joining the conversation. You are all just fantastic role models. Really a pleasure to be standing here with you. Coming up next week on All Things Heart, a patient who was 19 days old when she had her first heart procedure. 2 decades later, she felt great. So great that she ignored major symptoms that something else was wrong with her heart. So we're going to show you the surgery she needed, and the medical team will be here that she's since dubbed the dynamic duo. That's next Thursday morning at 10 a.m.